Hi everyone, welcome to this video. A little bit of a different one tonight, just as we are currently in the energy of Samhain, which um, is traditionally known as a Celtic festival. Um, a lot of people don't really celebrate Samhain anymore because it's now called Halloween. And traditionally the night tonight is like Old Hallows Eve, or Devil's Night. But I want to kind of talk about where that tradition kind of came from, the tradition of Halloween, and how I celebrate Samhain as a spiritual practitioner. Um, I identify as a witch. I wouldn't say I am a Wiccan, although a lot of my practice does kind of come from my earlier interest in Wicca, kind of growing up and um, practicing as a Wiccan for several years. I would say that I do take some of the ways that I work from that, but I don't really consider myself to be a Wiccan. Um, I do tend to follow like the phases of the moon, and I work with their energies. I do work with nature. I don't celebrate all the the kind of festivals or special days um but I do pay attention to the seasons and work with them. I just don't feel as kind of title really fits who I am. Um, but I'm going to have a little bit of chat about what it really means for me and use how I tap into this energy and what I use it for. Um, because I know that some of you were quite interested about that. So, as I was saying before, Halloween originates from the Celtic festival Samhain, and this was traditionally a festival where it was thought that the spirits would return to the earth during this time between the 30th and the 31st of October, going into the 1st of November. And during this time, the veil between the spirit world and our world was at the thinnest. And that meant that we could gain wisdom and insight from our ancestors, people that had passed on, relatives and friends that had passed away. And we could get that kind of insight and wisdom about what was to come for the rest of the year, or for like between now and the next, between now until it was now again, basically. So until like the wheel of the year turned the full cycle. So, and that is probably why Samhain is kind of considered to be like, sometimes I've heard it called the witch's new year. Okay, it's like a time where you kind of get your wisdom and your insight moving forward. Um, so it was thought that when these spirits returned to Earth, that sometimes what would happen, and I know this kind of happens in other cultures where there's this kind of maybe belief that the spirits are returning to the earth, and in some cultures I know that they kind of left food out for the spirits. They allowed them to feast in the hope that they would bring some good fortune with them. Um, this particular festival is associated with death and rebirth because you've got the end of summer, and you've got the harvest is kind of been, and really you're kind of making your way into winter, and it's really about this idea of, when you think back to like thousands of years ago, they may not have recognized that food would become readily available again. So there's this kind of notion of kind of blessing things and making like spirits welcome, trying not to kind of anger spirits, but providing like a space for them, kind of like a space for them at the table for them to kind of bless um, the next kind of season coming forward. Um, However, there was also, there was hope for kind of good spirits to kind of come to the table, but you also wanted to kind of ward off kind of more evil or mischievous spirits. So this is where the idea of dressing up comes from. People would dress up in animal skins. They would kind of wear kind of masks, and um, sometimes they would kind of carve kind of scary faces into kind of fruits and vegetables and things like that. It used to be turnips before we had pumpkins, because that was more kind of readily available at times. Um, and the idea was to make things as scary as possible to ward off any evil spirits. So that's where we get this idea of dressing up, and that's where it kind of comes from. And of course, as time has went on, um, particularly the Western world has definitely caught a hold of this, particularly like America, and this has became very commercialized, and this is now why we have like a lot of hype around Halloween. The shops kind of go crazy at Halloween, not as much as what they do at Christmas, but as it has become this recognised kind of holiday. But few people actually know where the tradition stems from. So that is really where it comes from. So as someone who practices magic and works with energy, how do I celebrate this? This is an example of an altar that I have. Now, this isn't like if I was doing magic tonight or tomorrow, I would probably use a bigger altar than this or a bigger table. This is just my miniature altar that I have at home. This is right next to my computer, and this is like where I do my tarot cards. If anyone's booking like a personal reading with me, I will kind of lay out my cards on this kind of altar here. So during the year, whatever season we're in, I typically have just a couple of things on it just to bring in whatever energy that we have at that time. So for the past couple of weeks, because we've been in October and we've been in that autumn energy, getting ready for Samhain, I've had this thing here. This is it's kind of like a snow globe. I'll just show you. It's kind of, you shake it and it's got little bats that fly around it. I've had this for a couple of years. Like my cat knocked it off the table a few weeks ago, and I thought it was maybe going to be like really broken, but it's only a little bit. So I've had that for a number of years, and I love it. It's really spooky, and it's got like number 13 on the door. So I've had that on my altar for the past couple of weeks, along with like my favourite crystals. And generally that's really all that I have on it. Like I'll only have one or two things just to represent my energies. When it comes to Yule, I'll probably have I try not to have too many kind of like plants or dried herbs or whatever lying about, because I've got kids that like to touch things. So if this was kind of out the way, I would have things on it. Coming up to Yule, I would have things like holly and ivy, but I think holly can be quite poisonous. So bear that in mind if you've got kids. Yeah, so I would have kind of more festive, kind of Christmassy things on there. Like lots of reds, maybe a wreath, that kind of thing, just tapping into the energies. So I have like just a basic day-to-day altar, a couple of crystals on there, something symbolic, and usually I just have like some incense, or like this is actually a candle holder. Um, and that is kind of like, I have the altar there, I do my readings there, I set my intentions there, I set goals there. So this is kind of like, this little space is like where all the energy is kind of built up for me working with it. And it's something that's built every time like I use it, like that energy builds there. That is my little secret space. So if I were like working some magic, what I would be doing was, I've got my goddess and the god kind of situated here. When it comes to sewing, in general, actually, I tend to work with some of like the darker deities, like that are more kind of focused on transformation, um, because that is just the kind of things that I am interested in, particularly when it comes to healing. Like I do like a lot of shadow work, so a lot of like the darker kind of gods and goddesses are more suitable for those types of working. So working with like of Hecate, um, Kali, working Persephone is actually one of my favourites to work with around about this time of year. If you've ever heard the story about Persephone, she was the daughter of Demeter, and I think it was like during the summer, kind of going into autumn, she was tricked by Hades, and she had to go and stay with him in the underworld. And while I want to say tricked her, he kind of captured her. And while she was down there, her mother was trying her best to get her back up to earth. And while she was down there, she was so distraught. Her mum was looking for her, so distraught that she, like the sun kind of diminished, the plants and the trees all began to kind of wither away, like we get with autumn and winter. And it went into this cold spell where everything kind of dies, which is probably how back in the day they kind of described the notion of the seasons, like spring, summer, autumn, winter. But she went to get her daughter back, but found that she had eaten a pomegranate, and because she'd ate like a seed from a pomegranate, she had to stay there. I think it was for like, she had to do, it was like 6 months up in earth and 6 months down in the underworld. So once she would spend spring and summer with her mother, and then she would spend autumn and winter with Hades in the underworld. So that's where that kind of story comes from. That's one of my favourite goddesses, and so typically around about this time of year, I'm usually kind of looking to do some kind of transformation work, and she is the ideal goddess for that, because um, she had to transform into this new role while she was in the underworld. She had to like adapt to new circumstances, and she had to leave part of her past behind. So typically that's an example of the kind of things that I like to work with. I like to kind of work on strengthening my abilities. I like to leave parts of my life behind, or behaviors or traits, or even things related to my mindset that are no longer serving me, um, and kind of bringing in new fresh energy. This time of year, because of that type of theme, where you've kind of got the leaves are falling off the trees, the earth is going into this barren state. So it's like everything on earth is kind of dying to be born again. It's that kind of death and renewal that is kind of being celebrated here. Um, so this is just a kind of rough example of what that would be like. And here I've got something to represent all the elements really. Like my crystals represent the earth. I've got some water. I've got the candle and the candle holder here for fire. I have got that's kind of resin, and that's for burning, so that's to represent air. And yeah, so it wouldn't normally be laid out like this. This is just like a smaller example. And I've got some offerings here to give after I finish working. So normally I would have some wine in there, but that's just diluting juice. And an apple. And apples are also related to this time of year as well. The Romans had a day towards the end of October as well that was related to the goddess Pomona, who was the goddess of fruits and trees. So that is that's why you kind of maybe get ducking for apples. That's what I've found out recently. I don't know how true that is, but certainly like fruits like apples and pomegranates are ideal to kind of have on the altar. Anything that kind of represents like death and dying is ideal for this time of year, like some old leaves. I mean, you can go as far out with this as you want. Decaying flowers, all that kind of things. It's up to you how you want to kind of personalize this. Normally I have a wand on my altar, but I'm trying to think what I've actually done with it because it's I moved house not that long ago. I'm still trying to remember where everything is. So that's an example of the type of altar that I set up for this time of year. If I am not doing any kind of spells or rituals or anything like that, then I probably won't let the night pass without doing some kind of meditation or some type of sitting with my spirit guides and just channeling any information that comes through, anything that they want to give me moving forward into the next kind of year cycle. I know like traditionally now, like society's kind of moved on from kind of seeing this as like the start of like the wheel of the year, because now we have Hogmanay as like the end of the year and the beginning of the new year. So I just like to kind of write down anything that I want to work on between now and that time, because there is like a lot of energy around Hogmanay and New Year about fresh beginnings, starting again, giving like the new year that's coming in like all your motivation and momentum. So I like to kind of pick a couple of things that I know I'm going to be working on in the new year and just getting like a head start on them. Definitely doing kind of some shadow work around that, look at what's limiting me, what needs to go, what kind of energy I'm in, that type of thing. So that's typically what I do at Sew In. Be really interesting if anyone's got any feedback or any questions. You can let me know how you like to celebrate it. And of course, sometimes I do like enjoy like the traditional Halloween, because I do have children, so I enjoy the whole the lead up to Halloween. I enjoy celebrating it with them. I love ghost stories and all that stuff. Dressing up, and just watching kind of horror movies. It is probably one of the coolest holiday seasons that we have. So I'm just going to leave this there. Comment below what you like to do. Let me know, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.